Welcome to In the Loop, the Charlotte Area Chambers podcast, where we talk about everything Charlotte with area business and community leaders. Here are your hosts, Chamber Chief Operating Officer Michael Orzak and CEO of Chase Media, Diane Chase.
Welcome to the Charlotte Area Chamber podcast. I'm Michael Orzak along with my co-host Diane Chase, and we have today Adam Rhew. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Adam. I'm so happy to see you. And I guess you're pretty famous, so we don't need to tell everyone who you are, but you are the president and CEO of SouthPark Community Partners.
Thanks for having me. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, it will be fun. Heading into the holidays, so there's that piece of your brain, I know. But closing out the year, what's top of mind?
Well, I think one of the things that's top of mind for us is that we're a relatively young organization. We're still finishing our, second year, 2.5 years in, and we have accomplished so much, and yet there is so much more to do. And so I think the to-do list is always top of mind. Earlier this year, we published our SouthPark Forward 2035 vision plan, which lays out a playbook for us to run over the next decade, and thinking about the progress we've already made on that vision, but also looking at the list of things still yet to do. So as we turn the page on another calendar, I think our team is, always looking ahead to what's next and how do we continue to advance the vision that the community's, handed us and told us to go run with.
Mm-hmm. How do you monitor progress?
We watch a number of different kind of indicators about the health and the vibrancy of SouthPark. The area we serve is 1 square mile, so we get the benefit of focusing really intently on a relatively compact area. And so we're looking at kind of macroeconomic trends, things that are affecting the development cycle, whether buildings are coming out of the ground or not. We're looking at foot traffic to our retail destinations. Again, at the holiday time, as you mentioned, we're really watching that. This part of the year is a make or break time for a lot of our retailers, small and large. And so we've been really encouraged by the foot traffic that we've seen both at SouthPark Mall and some of our bigger retail centers, and then on the micro, the store level data we're seeing is really encouraging. So we're watching things like that, office occupancy and vacancy. We watch our crime rate. We look for the foot traffic in our offices, lots of different indicators that sort of tell us what people are doing. And then we're obviously monitoring our own progress. What are we accomplishing as a team? How do we make sure that the marketing assets that we're deploying are performing as well as they can be? How can we ensure that the work that we do creates positive buzz and positive sentiment among consumers? So lots of different data points. And then obviously there's, the anecdotal day-to-day experience of being out in the community and seeing firsthand how people are experiencing the place and what that may mean for the work that we do.
Are you, is one of your priorities to draw in new SouthPark visitors, residents, companies? I know it's kind of a mix of all of that, but prioritizing one or the other?
No, we really think about places and the place that we're empowered to steward as being well-rounded. And so what we want is a well-rounded, a complete place, which means balanced uses between our workers, our residents, our visitors. All of that needs to kind of work in harmony for the place to be balanced and to be sort of seen as a complete place. And so we are thinking a lot about how do we grow the pie, not just speaking to the people who are already spending time and money in SouthPark, but also thinking really critically about how do we open up access to new audiences? How do we draw in people who may be familiar with SouthPark but aren't spending a lot of time there as a visitor, as a shopper or a diner, for example? How do we attract companies to invest and locate in SouthPark? How do we encourage small businesses to seek out opportunities to be a part of our community? All of those things are important. And so it's not just about lots of folks who are familiar with SouthPark and have spent time there. That's great. We want to continue to deepen the relationship with those folks. Then how do we attract new people and create a sense of belonging among new audiences that may not be as familiar with the place?
When people say South Park, it's almost synonymous with just the mall, right? And I know you probably have to fight that quite a bit in terms of broadening that to thinking of it as a community. How do you do that?
Well, it starts by recognizing that the mall is an asset, and so we should all be invested in the success of SouthPark Mall. We see, about 18 million visitors a year come through our area for non-work purposes. Many of those people are spending time in SouthPark Mall. It's an important driver for our tax base. And as we think about things we want to do as a community, a strong and vibrant retail sector and a strong and vibrant hospitality sector are really important for funding the kind of community priorities that we have, things like transportation investments. And so all of us should be invested in the success of SouthPark Mall and want to see it do well, because it is a driver of jobs and a driver of opportunity and a driver of entertainment. So first, I think it starts with acknowledging that embracing the mall is a good thing. But then the other piece of the puzzle is really thinking about the neighborhood as a quilt rather than its individual patches. We've got all of these great places in South Park. You have the mall. You've got nearly a dozen different retail destinations. For a long time, they've functioned more or less independently of one another as isolated patches. And our job as an organization is to start to stitch those patches together into a quilt, which means creating physical connections between places, a sense of identity for the entire neighborhood rather than one center or another, and then thinking about how we add in the things that bridge the gaps between those places, either the physical gaps or the psychological gaps between all these great destinations. So it's public art, it's programming and events, it's great pedestrian infrastructure, ways to make it easier and safer and more pleasurable to move around. All of those things help to create some cohesion in South Park and start for people to begin to think of it as a complete place, as a cohesive unit rather than its individual parts.
And that has to really bubble up from the people who chose to live there, the residents, as well as the business owners, right? So how do you work with them?
One of the things that I think is really unique about South Park when we compare it to similar places around the country is that you have this almost perfect circle of a commercial hub surrounded by single-family residential neighborhoods. If you look, they've got a big freeway running competitive set in other places. They're structured really differently. They've got a big freeway running past them. There's a body of water. There is some adjacency to a college campus or something else that really changes the dynamic. And South Park has this sense of an embrace from the residential communities that surround the commercial core. And so what that means is there has to be a symbiosis between those two areas, that the people who live around South Park, there are 100,000 people that live within 3 miles of the mall. Those people have to have their needs met by what happens in the business district, whether that's on a work, jobs and opportunity and investment standpoint, whether that's just good places to go out to eat or good experiences to have with your family, places to live, places for your guests to stay. All of those things matter. And so we need to be serving the needs of those immediate stakeholders because they're right there on our doorstep. And they are the people who are most frequently supporting our small businesses. The data tell us that the people who are visiting South Park most frequently are those who live close by, as you would expect. And so that relationship is really important. On the flip side, it's also really important to not be myopic and just think about those households that are right outside of our district boundaries, that the area that we serve is a regional activity center. It is a regional destination. And so it needs to serve lots of different audiences. It needs to be welcoming and accessible to a wide variety of diverse people. And so we need to be thoughtful and intentional as South Park grows to ensure that it's doing both, that it's meeting the needs of this huge constituent base, if you will, but that we also need to be sensitive to the impact of growth and intensity and density of development on the people who are most closely associated with the place.
It's fascinating to see how it is evolving, continuing to evolve. And when you think of it geographically, where it's positioned between all the activity in the Park Road area, for instance, and the Park Road Shopping Center, and then the residential near Foxcroft, and then as you get out toward Quail Hollow, it's really it's a dynamic area, but that also means you have a lot of different balls to juggle, I suppose.
Well, that's what makes it fun.
Of course.
So around the mall, you have this area, and then you have fast-moving vehicles around that area. How do you get people from one side to the other?
Our vision plan a lot about this topic of mobility, and if you look at our vision plan of the 64 projects and programs that are recommended in that vision plan, half of them have something to do with mobility, of getting people around our community. So it was clearly a topic that was on the mind of our stakeholders when we went out and asked them, what do you want to see South Park look like in a decade? It has to be a multifaceted strategy. South Park is unique in that we have CATS bus service, but we don't have light rail, we don't have streetcar, there's no major interstate, no body of water. So the ways to get around South Park today are your single occupancy vehicle, a CATS bus, your bicycle, or walking. And so all of those strategies have to be part of the transportation future for South Park. One of the things that we did that we're really excited about this fall is launch the SouthPark Skipper, which is a microtransit program, a free shuttle service inside of that 1 square mile area. And the intent of the program is to make it easier and safer and more convenient for people to move around South Park using our fleet of electric vehicles, to park once and to not clog up the roads with multiple trips from one destination to the next. And we've been really pleased with the results that we've seen in the first month. We have served just under 2,400 riders in month one with, we think, a lot of opportunity to grow that as we get into the new year. But what we're trying to do is sort of facilitate a new way of moving around South Park so that perhaps you're a worker and you can ride the bus in and get off underneath South Park Mall and be able to use our electric vehicle to get you from the bus stop to your office or to your job site. Or you come in for a weekend celebration and you're able to stay in one of our hotels. You never need a vehicle. You're able to use our fleet. Those are the kind of moves that we think will start to change the way people interact with the built environment in South Park. The other thing we got to do is make South Park much more walkable. There is a huge opportunity to increase our pedestrian infrastructure to build projects like the South Park Loop, which is a 3-mile urban trail to connect all of those great destinations with big, wide, safe sidewalks. So there's a lot of work on the infrastructure side that we need to do to make South Park more accessible for people moving around on foot or pushing a stroller, to be able to move through those means. But in complement to that, we have this big roadway network, and so using it more intelligently with things like the South Park Skipper will start to perhaps reorient that experience.
I'm trying to create a visual in my head as well as for the listeners and the viewers. When you talk about South Park, what are the main boundary streets?
Yeah, if you think about South Park Mall at really the center of the bullseye and start to go out from there, our district boundaries are, if you think about on Fairview Road, it's Phillips Place to Piedmont Town Center, and on Sharon Road, it's effectively the Sharon Corners, Sharon Square shopping centers to just north of the Morrison Shopping Center where the Barnes & Noble and Capitol are located. So it's a really compact kind of area, and if you were to look at an aerial map you can pretty easily draw the boundary based on where the intense mixed-use development stops and those traditional single-family neighborhoods begin.
Does it include any of Barclay Downs in that residential or no?
It doesn't.
Okay.
So our boundary stops just before Barclay Downs, and that's why that symbiotic relationship with the adjacent neighborhoods is so important, because those are the people walking in to a concert at Symphony Park, and we need to make sure that SouthPark is relevant for people who've lived in Barclay Downs for 40 or 50 years. And for the families that are moving in tomorrow with a couple of young kids, and this is their second home in Charlotte, and they're trying to figure out how to deepen their ties to their community. And so it's a big range of stakeholders, even just 2 streets away.
Yeah.
Now, is the skipper allowed to go pick them up?
Not yet. So right now,
it's like a golf cart. You go out of bounds, it shuts off.
our service boundary is the exact boundary of our business district for this first year. We've committed to do a 1-year study to figure out if the concept worked. After 1 month, I think we've pretty well proven that the concept has merit. What we'd like to be able to do is to scale the program so that it starts to serve a larger geography and starts to build some important connection points from SouthPark to other areas. So, for example, a future iteration of the skipper service model could include a connection from SouthPark to the Blue Line or from SouthPark to the airport. Maybe you start to draw an additional ring of service that gets you out to Park Road Shopping Center. Those are the kind of things we're looking at as we try to figure out how the program smartly grows. But ultimately, it starts to become a transportation tool for this sort of broader area, and then connecting SouthPark to the rest of our transportation network.
And I guess you got to keep Uber and Lyft and rideshare people happy as well, right? So you don't want them to say, well, we're not going to deliver you because you can call them a skipper, right? So it's got to be a relationship thing too, I imagine, with other industry as well, as you're offering a free service. And, the Charlotte Area Chamber is all about business, so I'm going to talk about this angle of, what's that relationship look like with those folks? Is there, have they said, hey, what about us?
Well, it's interesting. So one of the things that, as we think about this is you've got to think about everything as part of a transportation ecosystem. And so the way we see it is that things like the skipper ecosystem for microtransit, things like the skipper, bike share, scooters, Uber and Lyft, and CATS buses and light rail and streetcar, and all of the ways that we get around our community. And in a perfect world, all of that works together. And the great illustration that we've heard about Uber and Lyft is that it actually empowers those drivers to get freed up from some of these really short, half-mile trips. What we see in SouthPark is if you're staying in a SouthPark hotel and you're going out to dinner, your trip might be 0.3 of a mile. That's not a great value prop for your typical Uber or Lyft driver. And so the ability to free up those drivers to make trips that are more of a value proposition for them is good for that business model. And our service is, again, hyper local, so it's really operating just in this 1 square mile. So sometimes what we're seeing is people will come into SouthPark via Uber or Lyft, get dropped off at their first stop, maybe have pre-dinner drinks somewhere, use the skipper to get from that place to the restaurant where they're having dinner, use the skipper again to get perhaps somewhere else to do a little shopping or to go have dessert, and then they'll use Uber and Lyft to get home from the business district. And that's a really interesting user experience. And so far, it seems to be working pretty seamlessly.
I love this connectivity piece that you referenced in terms of I'm kind of in that neck of the woods, and you feel like there's no mass transit that really serves my needs and purposes. And having that, if that could be that kind of hub and spoke thing going on in terms of getting me to light rail so I can get uptown easy and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the idea, is that if we are able to build the model for this program, and we've seen this work in other cities. So the skipper was modeled after similar services in other communities. And a great example is Atlanta's Buckhead neighborhood, where our sister organization in Buckhead runs a similar program. They offer rides to the MARTA stops in Atlanta and enable people to get from Buckhead to downtown, say, or to the airport via MARTA in a different way. Mm-hmm. And so what we've been trying to do is figure out long-term for the Skipper's Evolution, how do we tie SouthPark into the rest of our region? And it's not just about serving this 1 square mile, but it's connecting that 1 square mile to the broader Charlotte-Mecklenburg region.
Time flies when there's interesting conversation, so we're at time, but I'm wondering, looking at the year ahead, 2025, what is one great opportunity you see and one great challenge?
One great opportunity is Symphony Park. It's our signature green space in South Park, and was identified in the vision plan as a tremendous opportunity for community gathering to really function as a true public park. And we've got some really exciting work on the horizon to take that space and invest in it and wrap it around extraordinary programming that's accessible to everybody. And Symphony Park has the potential to be a game changer for South Park, and we're really excited to push that work forward in 2025. I think one of the challenges that we see is we look out is continued uncertainty at the macroeconomic standpoint. It's been a challenging development climate for new projects to kick off, and that's not a South Park problem or a Charlotte problem. We're seeing that all across the country. The uncertainty in the commercial real estate space, the challenges on the debt and equity sides of commercial real estate development continue to be this sort of hazy uncertainty that linger in the work that we do. And I'd really love to be able to see some of that uncertainty start to shake out in the new year so that we can get some of these exciting development projects that are planned to actually kick off and start to turn dirt.
Turning dirt. I'm going to use that phrase somehow or another. Thank you ever so much, Adam.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on In the Loop, the Charlotte Area Chamber weekly business and community podcast with your hosts, Michael Orzak and Diane Chase. If you'd like to be a sponsor, please contact us through our website, charlotteareachamber.com. Join us again next week for the latest scoop, In the Loop.